Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Jim Bray, and I'm the current chair of the Environmental Commission in Lower Makefield Township. Firstly, if any of you have cell phones, would you please, shut them off? I was thinking of getting one of those ads like they have in the movies theater, that are really, really cool on the screen, but we'll work at that anyway. So the EAC has been holding lectures like this for 20 years now. And I started looking the other day, and I think over that period of time, we've probably given probably 70 or 80 lectures on various topics. This lecture today is going to be on single-use plastics. And Farron Savitz has generously donated his time to come here today and talk to us about single-use plastics. And also Elaine McCarran from Newtown Township has graciously said that she would join us today. I also want to thank you for coming today. I also want to thank the people involved in this presentation. Dominique Mitchell was really the spearhead, and this was her idea right from the get-go. And then Eleanor Turner is a relatively new member, and she hopped in with 2 feet, and she's been working with Dominique on this project as well. I also want to thank the Board of Supervisors for their generosity in allowing us an ample enough budget to make occasions like this possible. Also, at this stage, the Board of Supervisors has not approved nor disapproved the creation of a single-use plastics bag ordinance in Lower Makefield Township. The purpose of the seminar today is essentially informational. We've done some research. We think it's a good idea. We think it's a good fit for Lower Makefield Township. We're going to continue that research till the end of the year, and then our plan is next year, probably in January or February, we want to talk to the board about making a presentation for an ordinance of this type at that time. So anyway, I've said enough right now. And I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Eleanor Turner. Eleanor, the floor is all yours.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here today. All right, so as Jim mentioned, we have a few presenters today, but before we get to them, I'm just going to mention some of the tables in the back. If you haven't already, please take a look and go talk to everybody back there. There's Yardley Refillery, who's amazing. We go every week in my household. My husband's right up here. And they basically are reducing plastic packaging. So you bring all your packaging there, and you can refill at the store. Lots of really amazing provisions there. We also have Project Spearhead, which I was educated about today, which is so amazing, doing so much great work on cleaning up the Delaware and getting plastics out of the environment. My own company, actually, The Big Favorite, who is educating consumers on plastic in your clothes. A lot of people don't know that 60% of all textiles are made from plastics today, and that has huge environmental consequences. Not just for you and your skin and your health, but in any given wash cycle, 700,000 microplastics released into the water supply. And these are largely unfilterable, so choose natural when you can. We also have Kona Compost, which is great composting company, so they're diverting food waste. And then, of course, PennEnvironment, which Farron is here to speak to us about today. So I'm going to introduce Farron and Elaine, and then Farron will go first. So Farron he oversees PennEnvironment's Zero Waste program, working to reduce plastic waste in Pennsylvania and to protect our parks and open spaces. Farron's work has included helping to write and pass bans on single-use plastics across Pennsylvania, including Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and over three dozen other municipalities. His work has also included original research, including the report Microplastics in Pristine Waterways, a first-of-its-kind study on microplastic pollution in Pennsylvania's cleanest and most ecologically important streams. And Elaine here was the former chair of the EAC in Newtown Township. She is a force, and she helped pass the single-use plastics ban in Newtown. And so she's going to be really walking us through how they did it and just answering any questions that anybody in the audience has. So we're going to hold questions until after these two have finished, and then you will be able to ask any questions that you would like. Okay? All right, let's get started. Farron?
All right. Thank you all for having me today and for coming out this morning, and thanks for that introduction. My name's Farron Savitz. I'm the Zero Waste Advocate with PennEnvironment. If you're unfamiliar with us, we're a statewide environmental nonprofit. We just work to make sure Pennsylvanians have clean air, clean water, and a safe and livable climate. I run our zero waste work, which includes a lot of stuff around trash, single-use plastic pollution, but other things like what the tables in the back are about: composting, recycling, keeping trash out of our rivers, lakes, and streams. I figure for this presentation, what I'll do is I'll tell you a bit about the problem with plastic pollution, why we focus on plastic at PennEnvironment as a waste issue. I'll talk about some of the different impacts plastic has on our wildlife, our environment, and our lives. Then I'll go into solutions, what we're doing about it, both at PennEnvironment and around the country, ways we can actually put a dent in this plastic problem. And if at any point I'm not speaking loudly enough or into the microphone, just let me know, and I'll try and speak up more. But to dive in, the way we think about plastic pollution at PennEnvironment and in general is that we live in what we call a throwaway society. So much of what we use in our daily lives is produced and meant to be used just once, for a couple of minutes, and then we throw it away and we don't really think about it. However, with a lot of items, especially plastic items, there is no throwing it away. It never truly goes away. Whether our trash ends up in a landfill, whether it ends up in an incinerator, whether it ends up as litter in our environment, it is causing harm to our wildlife, to our waterways, to our environment, and ultimately to our health too. If you think about your daily lives, you start to see where all these items are and where they add up. You have the plastic bags at grocery stores. You have disposable bottles for water, for juice, for soda. You have coffee cups, you have silverware like utensils, those plastic forks and knives and sporks. You have straws, you have chips and bags of chips, candy wrappers. Halloween is a great holiday for seeing all the places we have single-use items and all that waste adding up and piling up that we use over and over and over again. There's a crazy stat that Americans create 12% of all the trash in the world, even though we're only 4% of the world's population. We, as a society in America, just use a lot of stuff, and a lot of that stuff becomes waste. These photos on the screen here are just things I've taken photos of around Philadelphia. You see stuff like this all the time. A plastic bag caught in a tree, people just leaving styrofoam sitting on the sidewalk. It's staggering when you start to look at it, what's in our streets, our gutters, our parks. In the average year, an American throws out about 1,800 pounds of trash, which I don't know if that is very, it's hard to visualize 1,800 pounds of trash, but it's a lot of waste. Because if you think about it, that's just 1 year and just one person. But there are a lot of us out there, and so all that waste has to go somewhere. And it ends up piling up. So I'll talk a bit about why that's a problem. But we focus on plastic at PennEnvironment partly because plastic is especially hard to deal with, but also because we use a lot of it, and it's very visible. Of that waste we create in America, 35 million tons of it is plastic waste. But less than 6% of that plastic gets recycled. So the vast majority of what we produce and use on a daily basis when it comes to plastic is going to a landfill, is going to an incinerator, is ending up directly in our environment as litter. And that's a problem. Before I dive into that, though, I do want to just sort of take a step back and talk about what plastic actually is. Because plastic is one of those materials where we are always interacting with it, we use it all the time, but we don't really think about what does plastic even mean. And at its core, plastic is just, it's a synthetic. It's a human-made material. And there are a lot of different types of plastic out there. And I'll talk about why those different types of plastic matter later on when we talk a bit about recycling. But up here on the slide, I have a very technical definition of what plastic is that I use when we draft legislation or work on, say, a local plastic bag ban. I will never talk about plastic in these terms. What I do talk about when I talk about plastic is how we see it in our daily lives. And it's the very visible plastic bags, it's those styrofoam containers, all those items I talked about before. But there's plastic in our clothing. Synthetic fibers are plastic. There's plastic in our car tires. Synthetic rubber is plastic. If you hear that word synthetic, odds are it's plastic. And so plastic sort of permeates our lives. It's in practically everything. It touches everything. And that's a big problem. So one way we talk about plastic, and a way probably everyone here sort of understands plastic, is how it impacts our wildlife. I'm sure the images on the screen here are not new. We've all seen turtles with straws up their noses on social media or on the internet. A bird wrapped in plastic. For example, a fish there with a bunch of plastic pellets in its stomach and mouth. The photo on the right there is from the Heinz Wildlife Refuge in Philadelphia. Those are just floating bottles and styrofoam sitting there on the water in one of our protected places. This is how we think about plastic pollution, as a litter problem. Plastic, because we use so much of it, because we produce so much of it, a lot of it is going to end up lost in our environment. Plastic can be ingested by our wildlife. They mistake it for food, and so they try and eat it. It can block their airways, causing them to choke. It can fill their stomachs, so they think they've had enough food and they think they're full, and so they don't actually try and find food and they starve. Plastic can contain chemicals, and so when our wildlife eat this plastic, when they ingest it, they're ingesting the chemicals too, which can cause all sorts of problems, both for their health, but also their breeding patterns, their reproduction. It has all sorts of trickle-down and rollover effects throughout our ecosystems, creating biodiversity problems. And it's not just one or two species. Most of our wildlife are interacting with plastic because plastic is practically everywhere in our environment. There's a fun stat out there that by 2050, there could be more plastic in the ocean by weight than fish. We all have probably heard the phrase, there's more fish in the sea. Well, there's going to be more plastic in the sea pretty soon. That's 2050. It's not that far off. So essentially, we're using plastic, it gets into our environment, it harms our wildlife. But a lot of the conversation when it comes to wildlife is that marine wildlife. Our sea turtles, our whales, our fish, our sea birds. And you might be thinking Pennsylvania doesn't have an ocean. We're not a marine state. So how does it impact us here in our state? Well, part of the problem is Pennsylvania is an upstream source of plastic pollution. The waste we use and dispose of here in our state gets to our oceans because our waterways are connected. If there's litter here in Lower Makefield, where we're in the Delaware River watershed, it can eventually make its way to the Atlantic Ocean. Or trash that we dispose of here sometimes gets shipped overseas, where it can get lost in transit. Pennsylvania creates a lot of plastic products. We're a plastic producing state. And those products we create here get shipped across the country. They get shipped overseas too. And so that plastic can get lost in transit. It can get disposed of elsewhere. And so when we see ocean plastic, when we see marine plastic, it's not necessarily not our problem because we don't have an ocean. It is our problem. It is our responsibility because we're the ones creating the plastic. We're the ones creating the waste. I mentioned before that Americans are responsible for an outsized proportion of the trash we create in the world. Well, that trash goes somewhere, and some of that is our oceans. And so it's our problem too. It's our problem here in Pennsylvania as well. I'll talk a bit more about some of Pennsylvania's connection to plastic specifically, but the problem with plastic does go beyond litter. So I do want to talk a bit about infrastructure. And by that I mean, well, when plastic is in our environment, it's not just the impact on wildlife, it's the impact on us. These photos on the screen are from a storm a couple years ago, again in Philadelphia. A lot of my photos are from Philly, it's where I live. But those are chain link fences, and everything you can see on those fences is plastic waste that was either on the streets or in the waterways, and when it flooded, it got washed up and caught in the fence. And so you can see just the sheer volume, it actually flattened those fences there, the sheer volume of litter and plastic pollution in our environment, and all of that is going somewhere. Single-use plastics like plastic bags and styrofoam are especially problematic. Plastic bags clog storm drains, which means either we're spending a lot of time and effort and either staff power with whoever is responsible for maintaining stormwater infrastructure, keeping those storm drains clear, or when we see heavy rainfall events, flooding, superstorms, and those storm drains are supposed to deal with the water, if they're clogged by plastic bags, the impact of the flooding is magnified. So either we're spending time, effort, labor, and money keeping them clear, or we're spending time, effort, labor, and money dealing with the effects of flooding and heavy rainfall. And unfortunately, heavy rainfall events, superstorms, flooding, they're becoming more and more common year over year. It's one of the side effects of climate change. And so plastic makes that worse, especially the plastic bags we use in our daily lives that we throw away because we're not really thinking about them. They can end up clogging storm drains. I have a couple different stats here. Philadelphia Water Department reports that cleaning up litter actually doubles their stormwater infrastructure maintenance costs. And in Pennsylvania, plastic is the most common form of litter. I was in the city of Reading a couple months ago, and I was talking to some of their public works folks, and they showed me a photo of plastic bags clogging their stormwater infrastructure. They're like, we try and clean it as often as we can, but even right after cleaning it, these plastic bags clog the infrastructure. I mentioned plastic is the most common form of litter in Pennsylvania, and that's not just a stormwater infrastructure problem. It's also a problem for just keeping our streets clean, keeping our parks clean, because we don't just let litter sit there, we have people who are cleaning it up. And that incurs costs on our townships, on our boroughs, on our cities, on our state agencies. PennDOT spends millions of dollars every year just on the roads they maintain. Some of our largest cities in Pennsylvania collectively spend tens of millions of dollars every year cleaning up litter or dealing with litter, that plastic pollution out in our environment. And those costs, if our biggest cities that have the most resources and the most manpower, the most ability to deal with it are spending that much, imagine what toll it's taking on our smaller communities, our townships, our boroughs, the ones that maybe don't have as much existing infrastructure or ability to deal with problems. And all that costs, whether it's stormwater infrastructure, litter cleanups, keeping our parks clean, that gets borne by taxpayers, by local residents. It's just you and me who have to deal with those costs. So plastic isn't just a problem for our wildlife, it's hitting our wallets too. It's a trash problem. We often have to pay for trash and recycling, and the more plastic we use in our lives, the more waste we generate, the more we have to pay for trash contracts, for recycling contracts. And again, taxpayers are the ones feeling that burden. It's local residents who have to deal with that problem. But the problems with plastic go even deeper than with our infrastructure, with our litter, with our wildlife. Just by a quick show of hands, who has heard the term microplastics before? Very cool. If I was giving this presentation 5 years ago, which I had done, most people hadn't heard about microplastics. So I'm glad most people here have either heard the word or know what they are. Microplastics are an area we do a lot of work on at PennEnvironment. I mentioned before our plastic pollution never truly goes away, and part of that is with microplastics. Plastic, unlike an apple or a piece of paper, isn't going to biodegrade in our environment. It's just going to break into these tinier and tinier pieces of plastic. And when it becomes 5 millimeters, or about the length of a grain of rice or a strand of hair, that's a microplastic, or smaller than that. On the screen here are photos I've taken of microplastics in different waterways around Pennsylvania. There are different types, and I'll go into them. But there's a lot of scary stories in the news about what microplastics are, what they're doing to the human body, what they're doing to our wildlife, what they're doing to our environment. And so this is an area where there's still a lot of information coming out. There's still a lot of understanding that needs to happen about their impacts. But as the story gets clearer and clearer, as we find out more and more, it does become worrisome what the impact of microplastics are on our environment, our wildlife, and our health. At PennEnvironment, we've done a lot of work testing for microplastics around Pennsylvania. They're in our air, they're in our food, they're in our water. We've tested over 100 different waterways, rivers, lakes, and streams around the state for these microplastics. And unfortunately, we found microplastics in every single waterway that we've tested. We started off with a project where we tested 53 of our iconic waterways. The Delaware River, the Schuylkill, we tested Pittsburgh's 3 rivers, Lake Erie. We found microplastics in every waterway that we tested. We followed that up by looking at 50 of our cleanest, most pristine waterways, ones that are designated exceptional value, high quality, or Class A cold water trout by the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. These are waterways that have to hit certain standards for contamination, for pollution. They are the cleanest of the clean, the most ecologically important waterways in our state. We tested 50 of them, and again, microplastics were everywhere that we tested. It did not matter if there was visible litter. It did not matter if no one had been near this creek in months, if it was completely untouched and natural. There was still plastic pollution in them. And again, I'll go back a slide just so you can see. These are different types of plastic that we found. They could be synthetic fibers from our clothing and textiles. They could be fragments of bigger plastic products, like a bottle, like a styrofoam container, like a plastic bag. And we found these plastics pretty much everywhere we looked. I can go in, if people are curious, in the Q&A into sort of how we did this testing, how other people can replicate this testing. I'm not a scientist, but we were still able to do these testing projects. It's a citizen science methodology. We had our volunteers, we had our staff just going around, collecting samples of water. We worked with the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia to do the analysis. So the filtration, looking under the microscope. We're working on more testing around the entire Delaware River watershed. So keep an eye out for those results coming soon. I was in the lab yesterday looking for more microplastics. But honestly, the problem is the narrative around plastic, as I mentioned before, is very focused on our oceans. It's very focused on that marine plastic. But now we know plastic pollution is not just an ocean problem. It's a problem for us right here at home. Our local creeks, our local streams, our local waterways. I've tested quite a few of them actually in Bucks County, including the Delaware River. I've done the Delaware River Canal just upriver in New Hope. I've done the Tohickon Creek, Neshaminy Creek, all these different places, whether it's a local stream, whether it's far flung, there's plastic in them. It's the places where we go fishing on weekends. It's where we boat. It's where kids play. It's where we get our drinking water from. Everywhere I've looked, plastic, and that's a problem. Our work adds to this sort of growing body of research around not just the country, but the world on these microplastics, where they are, what's happening with them. They're not just in all our local streams. They've been found in national parks. They've been found in rainwater. They've been found in dust. They've been found on Mount Everest and in the Marianas Trench, so the tallest point on Earth and the lowest point on Earth. Essentially, these microplastics are everywhere. In Pennsylvania, there have been studies on tap water, finding microplastics in tap water. There have been studies on bottled water, finding absurd numbers of microplastics in our bottled water, in table salt, in beer, in all sorts of fruits and vegetables, in our fish. The U.S. Geological Survey and National Park Service found microplastics in 100% of sediment samples and 94% of fish samples in the Delaware Basin. So not too far from here, in our watershed, almost all the fish they sampled and every sediment sampled, microplastics. The Delaware River Basin Commission found microplastics in 100% of samples they took from the Delaware estuary. So again, our local watershed, these microplastics are everywhere. And that's a problem because they're everywhere. They get in our food, they get in our water, they get in our air, so we're eating, breathing, and drinking in these plastics. I'm sure you've seen in the news stats like we're ingesting a credit card's worth of plastic every week. Or by the time you're in your 60s, there's a plastic spoon's worth of microplastics in your brain. And it's because we use so much of this stuff that it breaks into our environment into these small pieces. It ends up in our bodies, and that has problems. There's a lot of research being done on what microplastics do once they're in our bodies. But part of the problem is microplastics can contain chemicals. So that's chemicals that are in the plastic. We often add chemicals to plastic that make them softer, make them harder, give them color, give them different properties. But microplastics also act like tiny little sponges in our environment. They can absorb toxins that are already there. Heavy metals like lead, contaminants like PCBs, DDT, PFAS, and forever chemicals. All these chemicals can get absorbed by microplastics. Our wildlife consume them. They work their way up the food chain, and we're sitting at the top. So we're ingesting these microplastics, we're ingesting these chemicals too. Again, there's a lot of research being done on what the problem is, and there's a lot of science going into the impacts on our health, but there have been studies linking the chemicals and the microplastics to different problems in the human bodies. A lot of these chemicals are endocrine disruptors. They can cause reproductive disorders, birth defects. They've been linked to certain types of cancer. In short, there's plastic out there. It's getting into our bodies. Plastic should not be in our bodies. And so it's causing impacts for our health, and it's going to be causing impacts for the health of generations to come. And then one more problem with plastic. I'm not going to spend too much longer talking about the problems, but I do want to just mention where plastic comes from. And that is fossil fuels. Plastic is a fossil fuel-based product. Traditionally, that was petroleum, but more and more frequently, plastic is being made from byproducts of fracking, natural gas extraction. Fracking that happens right here in Pennsylvania. So we have what we call a cradle-to-grave problem, where we extract the natural gas in Pennsylvania through fracking, which I'm not going to go too far into, but is an incredibly polluting and damaging process for our climate, our air, our water. We then turn that into plastic in a process that is incredibly polluting and damaging to our air, our climate, and our water. We then use those plastics or ship them around, and then we dispose of them. And as we've covered, when we dispose of plastic, it's damaging to our air and our climate and our water. So at every step of the process, from when we extract these fossil fuels from the ground to when we use and dispose of the plastic, it is harming Pennsylvanians. It is harming our environment, it is harming our wildlife, and it is harming our health. So a lot of people often ask why at PennEnvironment we focus so much on plastic pollution when there's a lot to be done on the climate or on reducing climate pollution. Well, plastic is a climate problem. If we reduce our plastic use, if we don't use so much in our daily lives, then we're reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. There's some estimates that by 2040, plastic pollution could make up 19% of global climate pollution. So it's on pace to be one of the largest single causes of climate pollution. And that's kind of frightening because most of this plastic that we use is unnecessary. It's products that are like plastic bags, styrofoam containers. We have the alternatives, we have things we can move away from them, and yet we're letting them harm our environment, our climate, and our health. I also like to say that this cradle-to-grave threat in Pennsylvania gives us an extra responsibility to deal with it. Not every state has the fossil fuel extraction. Not every state has the plastic production. We do. It's our responsibility to take action and put a dent in this problem. And we also get other parts of the problem too. For example, you may have heard of the East Palestine train derailment a couple years ago. That was carrying chemicals to facilities in Pennsylvania to make plastic products, which would eventually become plastic pollution. When train derailments like that happen, and it's not just in Ohio, we have many train derailments here in Pennsylvania every year, just upriver in the Lehigh Valley. I'm pretty sure there's been a train derailment every couple months. I think it's every 6 to 12 months there's been a new train derailment in the Lehigh Valley. And a lot of these trains are either carrying plastic products, they're carrying the raw plastic feedstock to make plastic products, or they're carrying chemicals that get added in the process. And when they spill, these end up in our environment, they end up polluting our communities and harming our health. So, what do we do about this problem? We're all taught reduce, reuse, recycle, that one of the solutions to our waste and trash is recycling. And recycling is a great tool for addressing waste. At its core, recycling is when we take an item, our waste, we break it down, and then we turn it back into that original item. Glass gets broken down and turned back into glass. An aluminum can gets turned back into an aluminum can. cardboard, paper, all these items. Unfortunately, recycling does not exactly work as it should with plastic. Plastic is really difficult to recycle. I mentioned before, less than 6% of our plastic waste gets recycled. And that's for a couple different reasons. Some of it is we don't have the technology for certain plastic products. Items like plastic bags are incredibly hard to recycle. If you put a plastic bag in your single stream recycling, if you have single stream, odds are it's not actually going to recycle. And in fact, it's going to make other products that could get recycled potentially get sorted out of the system. And that's because plastic bags clog recycling sorting equipment. They jam the machinery. It's like when hair gets caught in your vacuum cleaner. So we have to spend a lot of time and effort, the recycling companies have to spend a lot of time and effort cleaning their jammed sorting equipment or trying to sort out some of these contaminants before it even gets to the machinery, before it gets to the equipment, sort it out of the system. And so it makes recycling more inefficient, it makes recycling more expensive, and it makes the whole process harder. Not all plastic can be recycled. I know a lot of us, when we look at a plastic product, we see that little triangle with a number in it, those little chasing arrows, and we think, oh, that means I can put this in my recycling. Unfortunately, those arrows don't actually mean you can recycle that product. Those arrows just mean they're just telling you what that plastic is, what its chemical composition is. And only some of them can actually get recycled. Part of it is a technology problem. Things like a number 6 plastic, which is styrofoam or polystyrene. Those are, we don't really have the technology to recycle them. And some of it is a markets problem, an economics problem. Recycling is a business, like trash and other waste management, and it has to make sense financially to break down plastic and turn it into something new. And unfortunately, it's really cheap to make new plastic because it's made from fossil fuels, and we're extracting a lot of fossil fuels. We're extracting more natural gas in Pennsylvania than we can use to power our homes and lives, and so we're turning it into plastic, which makes new plastic really cheap. And if it's technologically difficult to recycle plastic, and it's really difficult to do it, and it makes the process more inefficient and expensive, then we're probably not going, our recycling companies, it just doesn't make financial sense for them to actually process the products, to actually recycle them. And so when you look at those chasing arrows, there are some numbers that get more recycled than others. Numbers 1s, number 2s, those are more easily recyclable than something like a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7. But it's a good practice to check with your local recycling company, whoever handles that waste, to see what they accept, what they process, and what can get recycled. But at its core, recycling isn't really the solution when it comes to plastic. I won't spend too much time on this slide. It's just, you might have heard in the news about processes like advanced recycling or chemical recycling, where companies are saying they can take a plastic product, use chemicals or heat or something to break it down and then turn it right back into plastic. There are facilities like this that have been proposed across Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, the technology isn't there. It just doesn't work. These facilities pop up, and they basically just end up burning plastic or incinerating it, or they break it down into a fossil fuel, which is where plastic comes from, and then they burn that fossil fuel, which, to me, that's not recycling. If you're taking plastic and burning it, or taking it, turning it into a fossil fuel and burning it, you're not actually turning it back into plastic. You're not recycling it. You're just causing more pollution. And I'm happy to answer questions later on about a lot of these so-called solutions when it comes to chemical recycling. I'm happy to talk about other things people claim plastic can get recycled into, like a lot of people ask me about grocery store collection bins, or the benches made out of plastic, or decking made out of plastic. So happy to answer questions about those later on, but suffice it to say, there isn't really a tried and true or proven solution for recycling plastic. It's just not a technology or system that exists or works at this point. So if recycling is not the solution, what do we do? How do we get out of this mess? Well, we start upstream. If we tackle plastic pollution at the source, if we cut it off, if we don't let it get to consumers, if it doesn't become waste, then we don't have to worry about what to do with it. We don't need to think about, oh, can I recycle it? Is it going to go to a landfill? Is it going to become litter? We just don't use it in the first place. And the best way to do this is through policy solutions. These are things we've seen happen across the country for years now, and we know they work. Over a dozen states have statewide bans on single-use plastics like plastic bags, styrofoam containers, plastic straws and utensils. They include some of our neighbors like New Jersey, Delaware. They also include further flung states like California, New York. We use a lot of plastic, and if we stop using some of these plastics, especially the single-use ones where we have easy alternatives, then we can put a real dent in the problem and make strides. And again, you have some images here on the screen of different plastic bag bans or other single-use plastic bans at work in the country, including California, cities like Baltimore, Chicago, Washington, D.C. So these are what we focus on at PennEnvironment, the policy solutions. And at PennEnvironment, we are actually focusing locally, working with townships, with boroughs, with cities across Pennsylvania to tackle this problem. PennEnvironment is part of a national network of nonprofits. We have sister groups who have done this in other states for years. And we know that the best way to get to statewide action, the best way to build momentum and make sure we make as big of a dent in this problem as possible is to start local, to work with our local leaders, to get them to care about the problem, to get them to take action, and to mobilize residents. Also, plastic pollution is really a local issue. I talked about the litter, I talked about clogging storm drains, I talked about trash and recycling problems. Who deals with those problems? Often it's local government. Our local leaders are the ones who, when there are complaints about trash in their parks, they're the ones getting the complaints. They're the ones who often have to deal with trash and recycling contracts. They often have to deal with keeping the streets clean, keeping stormwater infrastructure clean. And so this is a place where our local leaders can actually make an impact. They deal with the problem, and there's an easy solution they can implement. So we've been working on that in Pennsylvania. Before I get to here, I do want to say, we have a bit of a checkered past in Pennsylvania with local action on this. Only a couple years ago, we had a statewide preemption law, a ban on local plastic bans at the statewide level. So it was illegal to pass local plastic bans. While other states were working on statewide action, we were moving backwards. And so we lagged behind many of our neighbors, which has allowed us to see how they do it, to see how it goes, to take their lessons and do it better here in Pennsylvania to improve upon it. PennEnvironment, along with some communities, actually had a lawsuit a number of years ago against that statewide preemption. Our state legislature let that preemption expire. And so now that our local communities have the authority again to ban single-use plastics like plastic bags, we've seen an explosion in them taking action. Currently, 1 in 5 Pennsylvanians live somewhere with a plastic bag ban. The vast majority of these local laws have passed in just the last 4 years, because that preemption expired in 2021 at the end of the year. So in just 4 years, we've covered 20% of the state with these local laws. It's a huge impact that we're seeing because, well, of these local laws, we have 41 of them in Pennsylvania. 2 of them cover our 2 biggest cities, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. Actually, Philadelphia's city council just last week passed a new and improved plastic bag ban, adding different components to theirs, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But these are super impactful laws. They actually get rid of millions of plastic bags every year. And that plastic adds up. So here on the slide is, I believe, everywhere to my knowledge that has a plastic bag ban in Pennsylvania. I put asterisks next to the ones in Bucks County so that you can see what our local neighbors in the county have done so far. I mentioned 1 in 5 Pennsylvanians live with a plastic bag ban and that they cover millions of plastic bags. We're actually almost at 1 billion plastic bags eliminated every year by these local laws. 960 million is the number every year of plastic bags that are no longer getting used, no longer going to a landfill, no longer getting incinerated, no longer ending up as litter in our environment. That waste adds up. That's over 5,000 tons of plastic waste every year that, again, isn't going to harm our wildlife, isn't going to harm our environment, and isn't harming our health. It may not seem like a local township or a borough can have a big impact, but each township that does this, each borough that does this, adds to the overall picture. It adds to the momentum, and it actually increases the total number of plastic we're eliminating in the state. These aren't just pie-in-the-sky solutions. They're not just making a statement. They're making an impact. They're having a real impact on our environment and on our lives. And at PennEnvironment, we've created a lot of resources to help in this effort. We have model legislation so that communities don't have to go it alone. I mentioned that we're lagging behind other states. That means we've seen what went wrong in California. We see where things went well in other cities and states. And so we've been able to piece together this model, which has been used in almost every community in Pennsylvania as a jumping off point to help pass their own legislation. It includes things like bans on single-use plastic bags, small 10 or 15 cent fees on other bags handed out by a retailer, so that if you have to pay a nickel or a dime for a paper bag, the next time you go shopping, you're going to bring your own bag because you don't want to have to pay every time you get a new bag. And so people then start bringing their reusable bags with them. They start getting in that mindset of, I'm not just going to take the single-use easy way out. It'll be easy enough to bring my own stuff and reuse it over and over and over again. Reusable bags, if you bring your own, it's free. You don't have to pay anything. Polystyrene foam containers, often called styrofoam. We recommend banning those too. Plastic straws and utensils. We're often seeing these made available only if someone asks for them, so that if you get takeout or if you go to a store, when they give you your food, they're not just going to throw a bunch of plastic utensils in there or a plastic straw in your drink automatically. You have to take that extra step and ask for it. We have these resources at PennEnvironment. We're happy to share them with anyone who wants them. It makes the process easier so that our local leaders don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to try and figure it out for themselves. We have all this available for them. And then we have other things we're working on plastic pollution. I've been talking for a long time, so I am going to wrap it up and not spend too much time on this stuff. But if people are interested in state solutions, we are working on a number of different bills at the state level in Harrisburg to tackle plastic and our waste crisis from different angles. These are all different things that we're working on. Of course, we know it's hard to do stuff in Harrisburg. It's hard to get stuff passed. And so the local level, the local action is how we get to statewide action. I did put some asterisks next to the right to repair there. That would make it easier to fix our own electronic devices like a phone, a computer, when it breaks. That passed the Pennsylvania State House with bipartisan support just last week. It now heads to the Senate. So there's work we're doing in Harrisburg to address our waste crisis. There's work we're doing in Washington to address our waste crisis. If you stop by the PennEnvironment table in the back, we have these little plastic pellets there. Those are the raw feedstock that creates new plastic products. All those pellets in the back are pellets we found in Pennsylvania or just across the river in New Jersey. They get lost by railroad tracks. They get dumped by companies. And so we're working on federal legislation to actually eliminate these discharges of plastic pellets, to make it illegal to pollute our waterways with plastic pellets. Last congressional session, we had bipartisan support for the Plastic Pellet-Free Waters Act, which is a federal law that would do this. Actually, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick was one of the first co-sponsors of the bill because it would keep waterways like the Delaware clean. It would keep our environment safer. And then one other thing we do at PennEnvironment to tackle this problem is litigation. When there are companies that are polluting our waterways, when there are polluters that are illegally acting, harming our environment and our wildlife and our health, we hold them accountable. We just settled a lawsuit with a company called Styropec in Western Pennsylvania, who are discharging illegally, millions of these tiny plastic pellets into their local creek. And so we put together a lawsuit with local activists who had been monitoring their waterways. The company settled. Over $2 million went to local watershed cleanup. And they also are now implementing technology so that they don't spill these pellets anymore. And so that they set this sort of technological standard that companies that create plastic won't be polluting their waterways, won't be polluting the environment as they do it. So that's just another tool in our toolbox at PennEnvironment for addressing this problem. And I believe that is the end of my slides. I thought I had a slide with some links. If people want links to stuff I was talking about, I'm happy to share them afterwards. I have business cards in the back. But I've been talking for a while, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Elaine McCarron.
I have to bring it down a little. He did a great job. So I have to thank Farron because 2 years ago we passed our plastic ordinance, our ban, in Newtown. And Farron came and spoke. But 2 years before that, in 2022, we had a voluntary ban on plastic. It's called a resolution. And we found it didn't work. And so we had to go the next step. So what I'm going to do is, first, I want to know how many businesses are here? Okay. Okay, and the rest of you are what? You're residents, consumers. So you're very concerned consumers. So what I'm going to do is just go over how we did this and how I hope in Yardley you will do this and get to the next step. First of all, our biggest concern was education. And just like Farron just did this whole presentation, we started with education before we had him at our Board of Supervisors. We were very, very lucky. We had Ellen Snyder, who is now the chair of our Board of Supervisors. But she was a real champion in this. And she started before COVID. Then we had the ban on bans, which was very interesting. As soon as that was lifted, we moved forward quickly. But we took an approach of first we have to educate our consumers. Then we went to 150 businesses. We literally went into the businesses, or we called them. And it was a challenge because some of these businesses have young managers, and then from the managers, we have to get to the corporate side of this. And what we found is we actually, wait, let me get it out. We actually tracked those businesses on what they used. I'll show you how we did this. We actually tracked them, what their products they were using, what their green products were using, who were their managers, how did we change, how did we get to corporate? And we were persistent, okay? And we had volunteers that helped us, and it was tremendous. But what I want to show you is we thought it was very, very important, and we shared it with Yardley. But then again, Farron used the same word. You don't reinvent the wheel. We were in the Plastic Coalition at the time. They changed the name to, what's the? Okay, Pennsylvania Coalition Against Plastics. But it was called the Plastic Coalition. And everybody helped everybody. So what we did is we laid out all of the ordinances on the tables. We spread them all out, and we looked at what do we want to do in Newtown. So most of the ordinances or like in New Jersey, New York, were just for the plastic bags. What we decided, we wanted to go a step further. So we did the thin plastic bags, we did all styrofoam, and a lot of takeout are styrofoam. So that was a big challenge. And then we did, because of the American Disabilities Act, everybody has to be familiar, you don't want to discriminate. So we did plastic straws and plastic utensils upon request. So that's what we did. So we ended up, like I said, 2022 was voluntary, then 2024 was not voluntary. But we went even a step further. we decided to do an entire package. And it was not only for the consumer, but it was for the businesses. We had to educate those businesses. So first we did frequently asked questions, and it was open to everybody. It was on our website. We actually did a preparation checklist for everybody, so they can think about it, so they can get educated. The businesses know how to start, right? 3, we did an employee training list. And I said to everybody as I went into each business with all the same volunteers, we said, we will train your employees. We will be there at the cashiers, okay? We even had a cheat sheet, don't bag. And this was from closed loop partners. Again, everybody used everybody else's information. Now, people will come, well, how do I do this and how do I do that? Who do I contact? We did an inquiry, if you have any questions whatsoever. There was a roadmap for everybody, for the consumer and for the business, what they should do. Yeah, of course, I told you, we tracked everybody. I would walk into a business and they would go, oh my God, the plastic lady is here. Or have a free piece of pizza. No, I'm here to see your bags, but have a piece of pizza first. So, so it turned out to be funny, and I know I'm successful now. Even in there's a ladies group, I live in, it's a community called Delancey Court in Newtown. We had a women's group, and as I walked in, they go, Elaine, you'll be really proud of us. We're not using plastic. Oh my God. And this is somebody that was a non-believer. I have so many bags, recyclable bags in my car. I'm very proud of you, you know? So, you know, we had to do that. But this was one of the most important things we were able to do. This went to every single register. I would walk into Cookie Crumbs and all, Crumble and all those. I go, where's your poster with a smile on their face? Oh, it's over there. I go, okay, can I have it? And I would say, here, this is where it belongs. But again, with a smile on my face, because we weren't there to I hate to say to be the monitors, to be the plastic police. We're there to educate. Most people, I mean, thank God for Farron, most people at that time, and he said, only a few years ago, if I said, does anybody know what a plastic nurdle is? So I know microplastics, nanoplastics, macroplastics. People didn't know. So what we had to do, when I say educate, we wrote article after article. In our local newspaper, in the Patch, in the Herald. We stood in front of McCaffrey's, it was like being Girl Scouts. We did lectures to the Girl Scouts, to the Boy Scouts. Everybody knows STEM, okay? We were there. And we did a big presentation to the little itty bitty kids. And I asked those kids, do they know what it is? Their parents couldn't answer. All of these children, it was so heartwarming. They answered. And then, of course, we gave them things. We gave away metal water bottles. We paid for it, just to get the little kids to learn this. So I was so impressed with our school system. We have a science coordinator, Renee Devlin, in Newtown. I have to say, she was all in. She called us. We didn't have to call her. And that's what I hope in this township, that whoever's educators, you think beyond just the retailer or the consumer. No, my attitude as soon as I started doing this, if I get to the children, I'm successful. Because the children get to the parents. So that's how we did it. Then we went another step, which is so important for all you businesses that you're here. There are lists out there of vendors for compliant bags. But if you call most of them, they're out of business, they have old numbers. we had to vet every single vendor. And now it's 2 years, it's 2024, 2025, it's getting towards the new year. We would have to revet, these businesses to make sure that people know where to get these products. So again, our goal was to help the businesses. Now, the other thing what people didn't understand, give me a second. We wanted to use paper, and there on the paper, there's going to be designations on that paper. And there's going to be, here it is, FSC, it's recycled paper, and that's the Stewardship Council. So all our paper bags were required with a minimum of 40% recycled content. We would love to see more. Now, we have 40%, we have 60% that our businesses are doing. Some of them were actually buying 100% recycled content. We were so proud, and I have to say, our small businesses were already doing it. Shocking. And we had to do another thing Farron had, where they charged for the recycled bag or the paper bag, the reusable bag or the recycled bag. The funny thing is, we put a 10-cent on that. Newtown Borough put 15 cents. Do you know why we did 10? Acme asked us. So I actually got to Acme on corporate and had them work with us. And they said, well, if you keep it at 10%, of course, we think it's better for our consumers. Done. Fine. Whatever's best for the consumer. We don't want to burden them with extra money. It's very interesting, our corporate, and this is a lesson for other townships. Like I said, the small businesses, most of them, dogs and cats rule. I can keep going and going. They were already compliant before our ban. It's very interesting. Acme said to us, and I won't, because they said it was okay to talk. They said, unless you have a ban, an ordinance, we are not complying. We know how to comply because we do it in California and we do it all over. Remember, these are national corporations. Gap, okay? They were actually pretty much compliant already. But all of them said to us, ordinance, we'll do it. Resolution, which we had, and I had it already. I brought it in for everybody. Nope, we're not doing it. And so we had to, like I said, change over to the resolution. We had to make a decision on what do we want to use, and this is important because you have these supermarkets here. What do we want to put for the reusable bag? Of course, at the time, it's in here, Whole Foods was doing a total washable, recyclable bag. All of these bags are made from polyester. What is polyester? Plastic. I remember talking to Farron about this. Go for the low, how did you put it? The low fruit, yeah. So, and most of them are not made in this country, but however, they're used. And they're used with stitch handles because they found that those are going to be the strongest reusable, about 150 times minimum, those with the stitched handles. Yeah, they could. Well, first of all, I have them. They're years and years old, but that's what they did. However, I just want to bring it to everybody's attention because the latest research shows sonic stitching. Okay, and everybody has to that's high-frequency sound waves that are used to stitch. They claim they're stronger than the stitch handles. At this point, I can't tell you, but this is McCaffrey's that are using it. And when they did this, that's not compliant, but they showed us this bag. So to us, okay, we looked up the research. Supposedly, they're supposed to be incredibly strong, the way the process is. I looked it up personally, the science. So we, even though our ordinance said it had to be stitched, okay, there's new research out there. And my attitude when I speak about science, I have a background in science. I'm a physical and an occupational therapist, and everything is about objective science. But my famous line is always, what you know today, you don't know tomorrow. And you evolve and you go with the science. So I have brought an example of all our different bags that we would bring in to everybody to use, all our papers. And if someone says to us right now, if we walk in and we had almost no issues in our township, and I want to make that clear. We had it that when we had our effective date, let's say you pass an ordinance and then 5 days later is the effective date, meaning that's when it starts. Then you have your signage, then you have 1 year from, we had it 120 days later, ordinance went into effect. Other places have 180 days. It depends it's good for your township. That's not for us to say. Only 2 at one point asked for an extension. That's nothing. Look how many businesses, you all know Newtown. Nobody asked for an extension. And then we had only a couple of businesses we'd walk in and go, oh, wait, your bag is not compliant. We'll work with you. Use up your inventory. We try to be as positive as possible. So that's how we did it. And I have to say today, we're extremely successful. But it was all due to also Farron that did this. So do you have any questions whatsoever? Oh, and before the questions, I want to say one other thing, because all the questions were so important. We kept track of the businesses that asked questions, and then we worked with those businesses. Like we had, Newtown Chocolate, has plastic in between their candy wrappers. And they were like, oh my God, what do we do? Relax. That's okay because there are exemptions for food. But so we actually would work with them. Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to,
Yes.
yeah, sure. Thank you guys so much for, can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you. So we're going to open it up for questions. And so just raise your hand if you have one, and I'll repeat the question on the microphone, and then either one of them can. Is that okay?
I know people in this area that actually give bags to people in New Jersey because they banned the bags. And they work at preschools. If a kid soils their clothes, what are you going to do with them? You put them in a bag so they can take them home to their parents. So it's a whole misnomer in terms of the use of plastic bags. And quite honestly, if we're going to tackle the environment pollution, why don't we have filling stations on all the sports venues that we have in Newtown, in Lower Makefield Township? Like they have all these softball fields. How many people bring plastic bottles to drink water? Sure. If you want to tackle something, you tackle there. We have plastic in 2 garbage cans right here. That's heavy-gauge plastic. That's not going to be recyclable. That's worse to the environment than a plastic bag that you get it out. And I've been fishing for 60 years from New Hampshire to North Carolina, and there might be microfiber plastics in the environment, which I don't doubt, because look at the use of K-cups in our country. My wife has 2 cups of coffee a day, and I keep on telling her, get
never found, like, I clean the fish, and I've never found any plastic pellets like were illustrated in the fish.
Yeah, you're not going to see them.
The water has been cleaner, right? Particularly this time of year, I'm going fishing this weekend up in Rhode Island. The water's been cleaner in the ocean after Labor Day because you don't have the boat traffic and you don't have a lot of, the fuels and oils from the boats that I can see down 15 feet in the water, maybe even 20 feet.
Sure.
So
Is there do you want to form that as a question? Sure, yeah, no, thank you.
I think a ban on plastic bags, they're not, they're not single use. People use them for other things. They use them for, I always use them. I don't just grab a bag from the store and throw it out into another bag and dump it into the landfill. And like these things right here, if the township's gonna force me not to use a plastic bag, then get rid of these. What's the alternative? Not using those big ones right there. You have two of them, one outside, one here.
Got to start somewhere.
Yeah, but you know what? You're forcing their.
Would you guys like to take? Yeah.
Go ahead, you go first.
Sure.
And then I
I
want.
mean, if I can actually speak to that, because it's great that you reuse the plastic bags, and there are people like you who do that. But there have been studies done in places with laws like this and places without, where they look at the total weight of plastic. And in terms of just the sheer number of the plastic bags you get at the grocery store, at restaurants, at every other retail location, far outweighs the number of people who reuse those bags and now have to start buying trash bags. So in terms of just pure environmental impact, you have a much greater impact getting rid of the plastic bags at the grocery store and having some people who have to start using a trash bag or another bag. By pure weight of plastic, they measure the plastic by pure weight, it's still less plastic that gets used, that gets produced, and ends up in the environment.
So restaurants in the area, if you can't finish your meal, what do they put it in? When you want to take it home, what's your alternative?
You can put it in a paper bag, you can put it in a cardboard container, you can bring your own bag with you. I have bags with me all the time, little collapsible ones they can just stash anywhere, or they put it in a container and you bring it with you.
And quite honestly, I was in Newtown last weekend shopping. Newtown Farmers Market, they offer me a plastic bag. So your van's not there.
Okay, okay. Okay, I will answer that. So, the Newtown Farmers Market, and I don't want to speak badly about, any business. Yes, you are correct. They're the one business that we have a challenge. We've been in there. We've been in there again and again, and they're getting fines, and we're having problems. We have very few businesses, and not everybody in that farmer's market, because I personally worked with each one of those vendors, and then I go back, and I'm no longer the chair, but I go back and I went, and yes, you are absolutely correct. I want to say also on the water bottle, I have somebody sitting in the audience that's also I'm a road biker, cyclist, we're having the water bottles, and there's another one sitting right there. She happens to live here. You'd be very surprised, we're all changing over our bottles. So when the education started, we got all excited. Even 2 weeks ago, somebody said, oh my God, I just changed all my bottles. That's it, we're all ordering the same bottles. So you see how we start with one, and it's education. So even for us, because we had the same, oh my God, we're drinking out of plastic, but we all ordered the bottles. So your concerns are absolutely correct. And as far as the regular plastic, it's interesting, plastic bags. A lot of them you can buy the more less offensive, compostable bags. And we've had this discussion, do we have a compost facility? Some townships do. They gather the bags, the plastics, and actually go to compost. So you see, it's a learning experience, and unfortunately, we all know this, everything starts on a grassroots effort. So yes, your concerns are correct, but I like to hear that you say, okay, I'm using it again. So, I apologize, I feel what you're feeling, and I've heard these concerns, but then we look at the statistics, the science statistics, and we say, we have to move forward. So, yeah, so it's all valid, what you're saying. Go ahead. You go, you go.
There was a woman in black in the back there, if you could hand. I saw her arm first, if you could. Thank you. The woman in black there, yes.
Okay, I think it's
So
you.
the problem with the banning right now, for those who think that it's successful, is that the problem with the banning right now is that for those of us who have reusable, they're actually ending up in the trash because of how many are produced and people don't reuse them. That's one. The way that it was implemented in Newtown is horrific for businesses. Businesses have been closing down, like in the last 3 years, routinely in Newtown.
Just from the ban?
Just from the ban?
No, just with the increased costs, right? Because it's a cost to the business. Acme lost all of their shopping baskets, and they continue to lose their shopping baskets, which are made of plastic. So then as they replace them, the amount of plastic used is more than the plastics, the bags themselves. For those of us who have dogs, we use plastic, and I refuse to buy plastic bags myself if I can reuse the ones that are given, because that's also wasteful. My question is, why do you feel the need to ban as opposed to incentivize? And I'm not saying, the example that you gave where you made it optional. Let's just say, if there are truly better plastic products, which the biodegradable that people are told to use for their dogs, why not incentivize the businesses to use that? And why force people to pay more, right? So the whole banning thing, I know you present it as like it works, but I actually reached out to a supervisor in Newtown, and I said, how are you measuring the effectiveness of the ban? And this person said, we're not. And it's actually,
tell me afterwards,
a
too.
comment that was made on Facebook, so this person actually responded that it's not being measured for its effectiveness. So some of these things that you're saying in practicality are not true. Like, I know you want to check the box that it's working. It's more than just one business that's not complying, but it's actually created a very hostile environment in Acme. There's people who refuse to go to Acme now. They lost a lot of customers. They go to Giant instead. So I get the point of starting somewhere, but banning is not always, like if you go to Aldi, you're incentivized to bring your own things because you get a lower price. You're not incentivizing, we're actually paying more. So like I don't shop at Acme unless it's a sale item because it's costing me more to shop there. So you're actually not doing right by the businesses, the local businesses, which is why a lot are also starting to close down.
Okay, so let me answer that. When I went to the bid, nobody's leaving Newtown over a plastic ban. Okay, well, okay, I have a difference of opinion. However, we try to incentivize, and why the 10 cents that we charge? If you look at everybody now walking around, people walking into all the supermarkets, they're carrying 10 bags with them. Okay, so what you're saying that it costs the businesses more, it doesn't. We actually did the analysis, and for the businesses, no, it's not costing them more. It's actually costing them less. We wanted them to make the money. And in our ban, it says, in our ordinance, it says it's mandatory you charge. Because if you forget, like you don't forget to bring your pocketbook, you don't forget to bring your keys, this is a learning experience, and people are still learning. And if you go to Costco, they don't hand you a bag. Exactly. Right, okay. But this is not apples to apples now. So, we look at that and we said, okay, it's 10 cents. You make the money, and some businesses said, we don't want to charge. I says, you have to charge. We don't want you to lose the money. So they're not losing any money. Okay, they're making money. And we said, you can charge whatever you want for the reusable bag. But what we said to people, and when we did the presentation, you don't have to buy a bag. Any bag will do. And we use that phrase over and over. I don't care if you bring a backpack. Yeah.
It doesn't matter where you throw it out, it all goes together. There's a camp at Drexel that a friend of mine went to that they told her things don't actually get recycled, so it's actually amazing. I threw out a stack of thick, reusable bags because I literally have no more use. I don't even know where they come from. Whereas with the single plastic, I did use them. I use them for trash. I use them for dogs, right? I use them to package things that leak. So it's actually for those of us who are concerned with the environment, this approach, I'm not disagreeing that it needs to be addressed. The approach results in more plastic going into trash. It's not even being reused as much as you think it's going to be. And I'm not the only one. So
Okay.
clearly, the gentleman here is not in the minority here.
I am curious where you're getting the reusable bags from, though, because part of the purpose of the law is to get people to bring their bag from home over and over again. And if you're bringing the bag with you,
Things in these bags, and I'm like, I sent a picture, right? I shared a picture where people come to my house, they bring it in these reusable, and I'm like, I have no use for them, and it's just piling up, and I actually had to bite my tongue and throw them out.
Or give them away.
I have nobody to give them away to.
I'm sorry.
so there are a lot of ways to actually reduce this overall number of reusable bags that people have stacking up. And we've done this in a couple townships where we do, I call it a give a bag, take a bag program. You have too many bags piling up. There are some people who don't have enough reusable bags. And so you drop off those bags, people can get them, they can use them. That way, when they go to the store, they're not paying the extra charge for a reusable bag because they're bringing their own. So that's,
Yeah, but what I'm saying is it's not practical.
I mean, it's working in practice in several communities around, huh? I can give you a list. I believe Haverford Township has one. I know Upper Marion Township has been doing it, Lower Marion Township. Those, of course, are not Bucks County, but there are a lot of places. There are a lot of places around that have this. Because again, Lower Makefield wouldn't be the first community to do this. There are 41 of them in Pennsylvania. And the statistics are bearing it out. These laws have an impact. We've done analyses on plastic bag bans around the country about what they're doing everywhere, and they're working. And although there might be isolated cases where maybe you end up with too many reusable bags, but by and large across the board, this is the way to approach it. It's the best tried and true method. We've seen places that try and incentivize people to bring their own bag by saying, if you bring a bag, we'll give you back 10 cents, 15 cents. And unfortunately, people just react better if they're being charged 10, 15 cents. It's just how to get most people to act. It may not work for you, but for the vast majority of people, it is how it goes. It's how statistics have borne it out. So that's why we go forward with this. We've looked at how it's gone in other places for years. We've looked at all sorts of data and statistics. And when it comes to tackling plastic bag waste and single-use plastic waste, this is the best method we can use. It's the best model. It's the most effective. And so it's what we recommend for the environment, for public health, and it's what communities around Pennsylvania are doing, and it's what they can do. It's an effective way they can take these steps.
And I want to say, can I just say one thing? With all these concerns, they're all valid. Everything you're saying is valid, and how we have to move forward. Did you ever read there's a new Stanford study out? It is staggering what's being discovered now in our bodies and how the plastic passes the blood-brain barriers and right. But we're trying. Yeah, see, that's why on a grassroots level, how do we do it? So yes, what do you do with your dog? I buy the bio bags, and
Why not put them into the supermarket?
those are far weaker. You're going to need something with a heavier.
But see, that's an excuse, because then you have to work with companies to produce better bags that
Yeah.
are more practical than our bags.
I think these are practical though.
But those are not, because they get dirty very quickly.
They're washable.
They're all washable.
And then you're wasting water and the rates, right? Nobody's washing the
I'll go. You go next.
There's a gentleman in green with the microphone back here. If we could take
Yeah.
Hi there.
Yeah, and then she needs.
if we could take a question back here.
So, first, I love the environment. I'm a very pro-environment person. The EAC members, they can attest that they see me at the styrofoam events with lots of styrofoam that I collect in the community, not just my own, but when neighbors throw out stuff, I bring it home and put it in my garage. So I typically will show up with a lot of things. I'm not patting myself on the back here because I'm against the bag ban. Few reasons where you can tell me I brought about 2 weeks of plastic waste with me. These are mostly non-recyclable plastic. And I'm a person, I go through the store, I stop buying a lot of products if it's plastic. A lot of the dressings I was buying in glass bottles, they switched to plastic. I'm looking for another brand because I don't want to ingest this garbage. But I can't help it because a lot of the products I now buy, especially the organic stuff, is coming in plastic, ironically. This is better for you, but we're going to put it all in this plastic. So I take all this non-recyclable plastic and I put it in my recyclable bag. What are you doing, like in Newtown or yourself in other areas, what are you doing to educate consumers to help them learn how to shop better, to look for things? Because we can't legislate change. Consumers have so much more power than the government will ever have to actually make a difference. I could go on for an hour about things, but that's one comment. The second one is these, I do have some, I do reuse them. I try to have my own reusable bags all the time. I forget my bag, I get to the store, Giant, at least the one I go to, doesn't have paper bags anymore. I have no alternative. Now I got to buy another reusable bag. And I'll throw one more thing into it. Instacart, Aldi's, all these home deliveries, you're getting reusable bags every time. So you get 20 bags and you shop every 2 weeks, do the math. You're going to have hundreds of bags. And they do use very good quality. They used to bring it in plastic. Now they're all doing it in reusable. So while I support your end result, your end goal of zero plastic, I truly do. I hate plastic. I go surfing a lot. I'm in the water and a plastic bag floats by. I shove it in my pocket, or if it's cold water, I shove it in my wetsuit. And I taught my son this. So I think education is so important. Like, we look around, there's only a couple of young kids here. The rest of us probably remember taking our Coke bottle to the store and getting our 5 cents, 10 cents back. And now you'd be hard-pressed to find a glass bottle. So I know that's a lot in there, and I support what you're doing. I just think plastic bag bans, you're addressing that 1% of plastic waste, while I got the other 99% I can't even do anything with. Except bring it here for a visual.
Yeah, I can take that in sort of two different parts for you. And again, it's great that you're taking responsibility for this stuff, that you're doing the actions to help impact the problem. I'll start with the grocery delivery pickup problem, because that is a question we've been working to address in multiple places. It's a question I get asked all the time. There are people who do, rather than have it delivered to them, you can go to the store, have your bags in the trunk, they put the groceries in your bags. That's one way of doing it. Some stores, I know someone who does this in Pittsburgh with Walmart. They get the delivery from Walmart, and it comes in the reusable bags, and they give them last week's reusable bags from Walmart. And so the store is able to reuse them and keep them going in circularity. So there are ways to address it. You just have to, again, take that step, think about it. However, the reason why we focus on the plastic bags when there is so much other plastic in the grocery store everywhere is that it's something the township can do. It's something they can have an impact on right away, that any borough can take action on and actually legislate over. I had that list of all the townships that have done this already, the cumulative impact, the thousands of tons of plastic that we can eliminate. It's one part of the problem. There are a lot of other parts of the problem, but this is a first step. It's not the only thing the township should do. It's not the only thing all of us should be doing about plastic, but it is a concrete, actionable step that anyone can do now. We actually at PennEnvironment and our partners around the country do a lot of other things, especially working with corporations like Whole Foods, like an Acme, like Coca-Cola, to try and get them to reduce the packaging they're using. We work on legislation at the state level to try and tackle this stuff. But you have to start somewhere, and we've seen from other places, that's at the local level. And what can we control at the local level? The plastic bags. So I'm with you on the grocery store stuff. I hate the fact that cucumbers, which have their own natural covering, are always shrink wrapped in plastic. But there's the steps we can take, and then there are future steps too. And so that's why we focus on this.
And I want to say one thing. I agree with him because it makes me crazy. I go to the supermarket and everything's in plastic. Then I started calling corporations. I called Driscoll, right? That's where your berries, especially your organic berries. And the rep said to me, "Oh my God, one more phone call." I think that if people start calling their corporations, hopefully, and working with these environmental organizations, yes, it's the first step, and we know it's the first step. So, do we agree with you? Yes. That was one of the first things we talked about. Also, when we were passing the ban. Okay, we're passing the ban, but we have all of this in the supermarket. Yeah, we agree.
So are you doing, like, in Newtown in particular, since you're the closest and you're in one here, are you doing follow-up things like educating consumers? Like, the ban sounds great. It is easy. It's the easiest thing you can do as a local government. It's probably the only thing you can do legislatively. You can't control all the other containers. But
Right.
what are you doing to address this? I get
At this point, at this point, there is nobody sitting there calling all the corporations. I guess we do rely on our environmental organizations to do it, and that's a very, very good point. And you know what? I'll bring that up at our township. I absolutely will.
I saw a question.
She was actually constantly questioning. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna make a comment about, what to do with your reusable bags if you have too many.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Donate to the thrift shop. Put it all in there, because they can also use them there.
Okay. The comment is to donate reusable bags to the thrift shop because they use them as, they can sell them or they can use them as bags. Great.
And I know they're good stuff, I'm pretty sure they recycle clothing even if it's unsellable.
Okay. Great, thank you.
The only question I had was, the bags that you have there, are they not plastic?
They are.
Okay, so it's okay to use those, I mean, I've got like 10 of them in my car all the time. I don't use plastic. When I go to the drugstore, I refuse to get the plastic bags. They want to throw everything
good.
into. Can we do more? I love the ban. I go up and down the street a lot. Bags in, especially on the bags, the one-use bags is what you're talking about. They're in trees, they're all along the road. I want to get out of my car. I can't do it, but I want to get out of my car and I just want to grab them out of the trees, grab them off the
Yeah.
street, put them someplace that they can be taken care of. Where do you put them? I mean, on occasion I'll forget my bag and I'll need to get a one-use bag. What do you do with them?
That's a great question.
Like, where do I keep my reusable bags so I always have them with me?
No.
Or,
Plastic.
oh, like once oh, well, that's why we're trying to ban them, because there's no real good thing to do with them after they're created and
But
used.
what I'm saying is, once you buy your groceries, I got all my bags in my car, and I can't run out to the car and get it. I'll need a small reusable bag to take everything home. Once I get home, I try and reuse it, but at the end of that, it gets used once, it gets used twice, 3 times. They're gonna eventually break, tear, whatever.
Yeah.
That piece of plastic that's now not usable as a bag any longer, where does it go?
In the trash.
Yeah,
It has to go in the trash.
there's
Yeah,
no other
option.
There's no other option for it.
Right, and, that's a great question, because that was one of my concerns. I actually called McCaffrey's, because they had the bin, they used to have the bin there. And Acme has the bin there, we all know that. So I called the corporation, I said, give me the stream, what are you doing with it? And I don't want to comment, I don't see these at McCaffrey's anymore. They don't seem to collect it there anymore. Yes, but they did. Because they used to give it, I believe, to Trex. That's what they said, okay? And I don't know right now. Acme still has it, so I know mentally that maybe it's not going anywhere, but I'm sorry. I have this huge bag of plastic in my garage, and actually on my way here, I said, oh, I forgot that. But that's what I do. I bring it over to Acme because I just hope, and, that would be a good follow-up, to call them and say, okay, tell me your stream of recycling for these. What company are they going to? That was an excellent response.
Gentleman in the back.
I just have a question. Since we're still stuck with plastic, if we put it in the bin, we have to take the labels off. Would it help to take the labels off?
The question is, do we need to take the labels?
It comes with a label on it.
Yeah.
Can the companies actually recycle it with the label on it, or do we have to take the label off?
To clarify,
Label off.
is this plastic bottles?
A box of strawberries.
Okay.
Right.
The question is, do we need to take the labels off of the plastic that we want to recycle? Got it.
You know anything about that?
It's a good question.
You, Driscoll.
I don't actually have a great answer for you on that because the way sorting and cleaning of plastic material that's collected for recycling works varies by who's handling it, who's processing it, where it goes. You can always call whoever takes your recycling and see what they recommend. And they might say, no, leave the label on. Our cleaning process will take it off. Or they might say, yes, please take the label off because it always gets stuck in everything. I just don't know your specific.
And the other thing, a couple of years ago, there was an expose on TV where they took a whole pile of plastic bags, the single-use ones that we get at the grocery store and other, drugstore, for example, CVS. They put a tracker in.
Yep.
They tracked the pile of bags from that recycling bin. Two things happened. Either it was burned, one retail store, or it was sent to the landfill.
Yeah, I do like to think that was on ABC News. They did that investigation all across the country, including Pennsylvania. We actually had done it first. We tracked those bags in California and several other states. We've done it with Amazon's plastic packaging too, which they say can be returned. Some of them, a small minority of those bags collected for recycling, end up going to a company like Trex, which makes plastic decking or benches and stuff, which isn't actually truly recycling because it's not turning the plastic bags back into plastic
That would
bags.
be downcycling, correct?
Downcycling, yes. But also Trex and companies like that prefer plastic that has never reached a consumer. They prefer the industrial baling and that stuff. So the vast majority of plastic bags collected at grocery stores goes to a landfill, goes to an incinerator. The grocery stores collect them because that's their part of the process is they collect them, they send it on to someone else, and where it goes from there isn't their responsibility anymore. So unfortunately, the bins are not an ideal solution for this stuff.
And it's called wish cycling, I think.
Yes.
That's right. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions.
Yeah, just in terms of changing consumer behavior, because we actually kind of do an internal audit of like how much plastic you're throwing out, how many plastic bags, plastic packaging. If you go to the supermarket, you're just awash in plastic packaging. Did you find with the plastic ban, single-use plastic ban in Newtown, that it started to change kind of consumer behavior? People started to think about how much plastic they were using in their everyday life and look for ways to maybe reduce that because this one prohibition on single-use plastic sort of creates this cycle.
So the question is, did the single-use plastic ban affect consumer behavior in other ways and bring awareness to the amount of plastic that they are using?
Okay, so we actually did that on the school level when we went into the schools and we said, we're going to give you a challenge and figure out how much plastic you're using every day to these little kids. And that's how we started. We said, if we get the children to start thinking about this. And I think I mentioned when I came in here, I had an incident yesterday that I walked into a party and all of a sudden the people's behavior was changing. They go, oh, see, we're not using plastic, Elaine, we don't have plastic plates. And I said, then I've been successful. So I think it's more of a trickle down. I think what everybody's saying is right. We need to keep doing education. We can't just pass the ban and that's it. You know, we need to keep writing the articles, a follow-up, and just from that, I think I better write a follow-up, you know, for Newtown. And go to our Board of Supervisors and say, what can we do next? So,
I will
yeah.
say, I am a product of the acid rain PSA from the 90s, so my my own education as a kid definitely impacted my my awareness around this. All right, one more question.
It's not really a question I'd like to ask. I'd just like to make a point, because I'm not really plugged in here, but it affects what everybody's talking about. It affects what everybody's talking about, and everybody's concerned about the plastic bag issue, particularly in this township and in this county and in Pennsylvania specifically. The reason I say that is because I live in New Jersey. We've had a plastic ban in the state of New Jersey for years now. It's an inconvenience. It's not critical. I love the suggestion of taking the plastic bags that they use in the grocery stores and making a donation bin, if you will, at a grocery store, because I'm forever forgetting my bags if I don't have them in the car, or I take them out of my car because I have people in my car or whatever. Then I go to the grocery store and I don't have any bags. So then I carry my shopping cart. I literally will push my shopping cart to my car and unload everything in my shopping cart into the car, and then when I get home, I'll just transport it into the bags. Because, quite honestly, I'm too damn cheap to buy another bag, and I'll admit that. I'm fine with that. But I already have 20 at home.
Then it worked.
Then it works.
So my point here is that in this case, New Jersey has been used to doing what there's concerns about in this area for years now. And everybody's doing fine. The waste is definitely not ending up in the oceans, which is critically where we don't want it. That's my only point. I don't want to take anybody else's time. I don't need any more questions. I don't have any more questions, I mean. It's just a point from a different perspective from everybody concerned about this is never going to work. It is working. It does work. And I live right across the bridge.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. And I want to just follow up on that. That was one of my points when we were doing that. I'm a New Yorker, moved to New Jersey, and I ended up in Pennsylvania. So, and if you go up and down the East Coast, I go to Maine and stay up there, part of the summer. Everybody has it going up into, especially Maine. They even charge for the recyclers, on how much plastic they have to recycle. So I appreciate what you're saying. It may be an inconvenience, but so many states are doing it. And I kept track of all the states especially along the East Coast, when people were talking about this. I go, okay, they have it. We don't. But New York and New Jersey, we're right there. They do. So, except New Jersey, if you remember, they allowed, because it was initial. Remember, everything changes and things were now updated, but they allowed the thick plastic bags. Target was doing that, unfortunately. But again, they were the newer ones. And everybody learns from each other and updates. So it's a very good point.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to Elaine McCarron and Farron Savitz, and to the EAC. Please check out the tables in the back, and I'm just going to let Jim say a few closing words.
All right, I want to thank everybody for coming here today. Again, as I mentioned in the beginning, we hold lectures and seminars like this all year long. Now with the addition of Birdtown, Pennsylvania, as a Lower Makefield Township entity, we're doing 5 or 6 a year. So if you enjoy these sessions, please let our Board of Supervisors know. Again, it's through their generosity in giving us enough budget that things like this are possible. Again, I want to thank all of you for coming out today. On the 15th, we're having a lecture right here on birding from an expert. I'm a naturalist at Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve, and Juanita Hummel is a fellow naturalist. This woman knows more about birds than any person I've ever seen anywhere. So please consider coming to that. And also on the 22nd, there's going to be a children's program in collaboration with Bowman's Hill Wildflower Preserve and the Yardley EAC. Thank you again for coming out today.
Thank you.